This is an historic honor which matches the weight of our times.
Prime Minister Mark Carney announcing that King Charles will visit Canada later this month. Charles is set to deliver the first throne speech of the new Liberal government. Now, typically, that's read by the Governor General. This will be the first time that the address has been given by a monarch in over 5 decades. Carney says he made the request on a visit with Charles before the election. He says the King's presence will underscore Canada's sovereignty. I want to talk a little bit more about the visit that's upcoming with Edward Wang. He's a royal commentator, and he has arrived dressed for the King's visit. You know, he doesn't get here for a month, right?
No, I know. I'm attending the Vancouver Opera Gala right after this, making a plug for a great Vancouver liberal arts organization.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love that you came in a tux, and I appreciate you making the time for us to talk about this. I think, you know, probably for a lot of Canadians, particularly those who have a lot of interest in the royal family, this is a pretty big deal.
Yes.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, our head of state is His Majesty the King. The Governor General represents the King in all of his federal constitutional responsibilities. But at the end of the day, our head of state is the King. And coming over to open Parliament and give the throne speech is the most significant duty of our Canadian head of state. And it's definitely a symbol and a signal to the world, especially our neighbors to the south, that we're very much a sovereign country. And our head of state, someone who is well known over the entire globe, is coming over to exercise his constitutional duties and to emphasize Canadian sovereignty.
Yeah, you mentioned our neighbors to the south. We know that Donald Trump has expressed actually some admiration for the royal family. What kind of signal do you think it sends that King Charles would make this trip?
Well, I think President Trump many times have emphasized how much respect he had for both the late Queen Elizabeth and our current sovereign, King Charles. And there's been so many times where he spoke very negatively of King Charles's former Canadian Prime Minister, Justin Trudeau. So inviting someone over who he very much respects is another emphasis of maybe you should take a step back and think about certain things, certain constitutional norms before weighing in and challenging the sovereignty of your closest neighbor.
Yeah, what do you think we might hear from King Charles in this speech from the throne? I mean, do we expect that there might be any kind of condemnation for the use of the 51st state, that sort of thing?
Well, the throne speech is written by the government of the day and outlines their upcoming legislative agenda. Now, there are, parts of the speech which could be used to emphasize certain trends. The first time Queen Elizabeth gave the throne speech in Canada in 1957, she referred to I am here as your queen, and together we form the Parliament of Canada for the first time. And I think that a similar message could be made by the King just to emphasize that we are a sovereign country. We're very proud of our sovereignty from coast to coast to coast. But there wouldn't be any direct statements. You know, there has to be some sort of finesse in politics to all of this.
Right, because the King can do things sort of by symbol, but never actually does, exert any political speech in any way. But before I have to ask you, because you're in here, the royal family making some big headlines today. In particular, Prince Harry, he gave an interview to the BBC. I want to play a little clip of that.
I would love reconciliation with my family. There's no point in continuing to fight anymore. As I said, life is precious. I don't know how much longer my father has. He won't speak to me because of this security stuff. But it would be nice to reconcile. As I learned through the First Nations throughout Canada, because of the Invictus Games, their goal in life was always truth and reconciliation. And I turned around to them in many conversations and I said, right, but reconciliation can't come without truth.
So a reference to Canada's First Nations, his father's health. We know that King Charles has been dealing with cancer, but is still making the trip to Canada. What do you make of that interview and what he's saying in that little clip there about the relationship right now?
Well, it is quite sad. At the end of the day, we do have to remember, although it is a constitutional institution, it is still very much a family at the end of the day. The King places a lot of significance within his family, but he's also been much hurt. Recently, there's a lot of awkwardness between Prince Harry and the King because at the end of the day, Prince Harry was suing the British government, which is carried on in the name of the King. And as a constitutional monarch, the King has to take a step back and not be involved with that in that at all. And so it's definitely created a sense of friction and distance between father and son, which is quite sad. My belief is that the king cares very deeply for his son and would very much appreciate rapprochement, but there needs to be certain guarantees and certain comfort that whatever they talk about would not be recorded for the next Netflix documentary, for example.
Yeah, so, I mean, Prince Harry has made this overture. He's also lost that case that you're talking about, and so now he's reaching out here. Am I, is this a dream that maybe that reconciliation might happen in the next month or so? King Charles coming to Canada, Los Angeles not that far away?
Well, it would be, I think, impossible for the king to tack on a trip to the United States as part of this. As if he were to visit the U.S., it would be in his capacity as king of the United Kingdom and not as king of Canada. And there needs to be formal advice. And any sort of visit of that caliber requires long time governmental planning, which makes our visit so significant because it was planned in a very short time. And it just goes to show how much the king cares about his role as sovereign of Canada, and that he's very much not a fair weather friend. He's there to help Canadians when we need it because he is our head of state and he cares so much about this country.
Yeah, no, and that is a really good point. These kinds of royal visits, they do have a lot of planning. There's a huge itinerary, huge contingent generally comes with the King Charles or any of the monarchy when they come to Canada. So, I mean, outside of that speech from the throne that we're going to hear from the king, what else do you think Canadians might experience? I mean, there's not going to be, I don't think, any kind of a big tour, but what are you hoping for?
Well, there's only 2 days, so hopefully there will be a community event, maybe hosted by the Governor General Rideau Hall, where leaders of Indigenous groups, youth leaders could come and participate in that. The King is very much involved with a number of organizations in Canada, particularly through the King's Charities Canada, which focuses on food security for the North, youth employment, opportunities for veterans in order to become reestablished in day-to-day life. And so these are concerns that the king cares very much about. And I think, in a situation where if we had more time, he could emphasize some of these very much Canadian causes. But we are very short in time with only a very short 2-day visit, and most of it will be taken up by the throne speech. But I believe, given all the past visits and all the past emphasis on reconciliation with the Indigenous groups, they will have a very strong focal point.
Well, whatever events are planned, I'm sure there'll be a dress code, and Edward Wang is dressed for it as he heads over to that gala. Really appreciate your time. Edward Wang, a royal commentator.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.